Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to say thank you to our witnesses because they've been incredibly patient with us today because this is such an important hearing from us. I'm one of those that served on an election commission before I was in elective office. I did that in my county. I know how incredibly important it is to make it possible for everyone to vote. Mr. Gardner, I appreciated your comments on how your focus is on making it easy for people to vote while still making those votes safe. And I believe everybody should have their opportunity to vote. I have a pickup truck, and for about 25 years, the license plate on that pickup truck said vote, because it was a way for me to send that message to everybody, register to vote. I will say it's been a little bit distressing to me today listening to this hearing. I got into the room for a few minutes to hear the premise of this hearing as if there is some assault on the right to vote in this country. And we know that we have had record voter turnout, and my colleagues across the aisle know that we have had record voter turnout in recent years. And this is to say that it's Jim Crow laws. In my opinion, that is not a valid premise. And I find it unfortunate that there are some who've continued to push that and push it on the state of Georgia. I think we have to look at the lead up to this and the things that have been said. Look at the Washington Post and their comments about President Biden when he falsely claimed that Georgia's recent voting reform law, and I'm quoting, ends voting hours early so working people can't cast their vote after their shift is over, end quote. And President Biden went on to describe Georgia's election law as, quote, Jim Crow in the 21st century, unquote, which appears to be the inspiration for this hearing. The problem is, as we've discussed several times, the Washington Post gave President Biden's remarks on this issue 4 Pinocchios. In other words, they say that was a lie. Quote, one of the biggest changes in the bill would expand early voting access for most counties, unquote. That's the Georgia Public Radio report on the Georgia voting laws. Quote, for most counties, you will have an extra weekend day and your weekday early voting hours will likely be longer, unquote. So in actuality, the Georgia voting law that President Biden claimed ended early voting actually did the exact opposite. It expanded these voting opportunities. Unfortunately, President Biden's repeating of the lie had rapid real-world consequences. You look at this with Major League Baseball. So this repeated lie caused the All-Star game in Atlanta to die. And I would have loved to have asked Senator Warnock, and probably will, how he will answer to his constituents for the loss of that game. And Ms. Abrams, I do have a question that I wanted to come to you on. When you've heard the comments, the repeated falsehood from the president that this is something that would hamper voting rights, and the comments about the Georgia law, does this hurt or help your cause for access for voting to more individuals?
With all due respect, Senator, to the Washington Post, I actually disagree with their characterization. For early in-person voting, 78% of counties already had more than the 8 hours of early voting. What SB 202 did was codify 9
All right.
to 5.
I don't mean to interrupt, but thank you. Thank you for that. Because I do have another question I want to go to Ms. Jones on. As I mentioned, I'd served on a voter, on an election commission. And my question for Representative Jones is about the voter rolls and the updating of the voter rolls. We took this as a very serious responsibility and worked hard at updating voter rolls. When you talk about the legislation that is being pushed, they would disallow counties to update their rolls. Therefore, mail-out ballots would go to people, as we saw in 2020, that no longer live in an area, or individuals that are deceased. And people saw hundreds of these on social media. So talk with me about how this process of going through and cleaning up these rolls adds and underpins the accuracy and the integrity in the elections.
Thank you, Senator. It is incredibly important to have so that you can have integrity in elections, that the voter rolls are not only cleaned up, but that there's also some security on the back end, because we did have voters receive multiple absentee ballot requests for previous occupants of their home or their apartment. And so that is why we also put the reasonable requirement in absentee ballots that they list their driver's license number or their free voter ID. And there's other provisions if they're one of the 2 or 3% of Georgians who don't have that. But the two go together, so that we want every voter to cast a vote, and we want every legitimate vote to count.
Well, and that is imperative in preserving the one person, one vote rule, is making certain that the rolls are correct, so that only people who currently live in an area are able to vote in that state or in that county for those elections, so that you eliminate a lot of the voter fraud. Voter laws should make the elections more secure, and they should make it more difficult to cheat. That is how we preserve the integrity in the election system. And everyone entitled to vote should be able to vote. Secretary Gardner, I do have a question.
Senator,
I'm going to submit this to you. I'm going to submit, yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to submit my question to Secretary Gardner because you've been generous with your time and the hearing has run very long. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me get a couple of questions in.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn, and Mr. Gardner will receive the question. I hope anyone who does receive a question among our witnesses will respond in a timely fashion.